All right, so let's talk about chapter 14, food and beverage service. Does anybody have experience in food and beverage service of any kind? Whether it's a restaurant or catering, okay? What's your experience? Server at Bubba's, okay, excellent. Oh, the pretzel place, awesome, excellent. Okay, yeah, awesome. I'm drawing a blank right now, but I felt like I knew the lady who owned a lot of the idioms. Yes, she did. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I worked with her through the Visitor Alliance, the Tourism Council. Yeah, awesome. Is she still in San Antonio? Do you know? I'll have to reach out to her on Facebook and tell her that she came up in my class today. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Which location did you work at? North Star. Okay. Awesome. Cool. I got in some, I can't remember when it was, but I got in some silent auction, like this card that has like one of everything off the menu. And I think I still have a couple of punches. Every time I travel and go to the airport, I always make sure I have my card with me. That's usually what I get before my flight. All right. So food and beverage. And any food and beverage experience? Eating food and beverage? Awesome. Okay. So um we'll talk a little bit about the food and beverage in general. But Alyssa, any food and beverage experience from you? Awesome. Very good. I think a lot of, again, a lot of that, those experiences come into play in the future. You can always think, I think sometimes people look down on um entry level positions as they're just like low level positions, but that's where you learn a lot of your skills as a server. That's where I learned a lot of my people skills. That's how I learned how to talk to random people about random stuff. Same thing with bartending. But I think that every level is foundational, and we always pull from the things that we learned in the past to apply. So as a server, especially in food and beverage functions, you have a different perspective of, you can kind of see what could potentially go wrong, or what ways can we make this a little bit more efficient. When we talk about food and beverage functions in hotels, we are traditionally talking banquet service. And banquet service is very different from table service in a restaurant, like as a waitress or a waiter or as a server, because typically everyone's eating the same thing. And so that banquet service, the process of serving 500 people a plated meal, is very different than this. We're not going to sit down and talk to every single person as we drop their plate off of food. We're going to drop the plate off of food and go get some more food to drop off. Okay. So a little bit different when we talk about banquet servers versus servers in a restaurant. But when we talk about food and beverage functions as part of groups, we're looking at primarily the banquet side of things. People are more food savvy today. We have access to technology. We have access to TikTok, to Facebook, to everything, like to pictures. People want to say, I want this to be the meal that I served at this banquet for this group, right? And whether we're talking corporate or leisure, or not leisure, sorry, corporate or social. Social is going to be things like obviously weddings, anniversaries, class reunions. Those types of things are going to be more social events versus the corporate events that are coming for business purposes. So customized menus is a big trend. And a lot of chefs now, people that are sitting down for a banquet, we used to have this thing we called chamber chicken. Okay. And chamber chicken was this term that we used for any association luncheon that you go to a hotel ballroom that would always serve chamber chicken. Chamber meaning like the Chamber of Commerce as an association. And we always serve chicken because chicken's a really cost-effective protein. And when you're feeding 500 people and you're feeding it for the Chamber of Commerce or like Alamo Area Hospitality Association, oftentimes you're selling that for a lower price than what you would sell it for to the average guest coming to your hotel, because you're doing it as a member of that association. You're doing it as a member of the community of that industry, because you understand that everyone coming to your hotel, like for example, we went to Zoka, there's people that had not been to Zoka since it had remodeled. And so that was a really good opportunity for them to showcase to these industry people their space. So yeah, they're going to offer it at a lower price because they're going to get potentially the payback of people returning for future events. Okay. Another thing is action and I should say tasting stations. Action and tasting stations. So one of the big trends in, rather than having a buffet table all set up with a buffet where everyone waits in line, is maybe we're going to put our protein over here. We might do a mac and cheese bar over here. So instead of serving like protein, mac and cheese, green beans, and dessert all in one, we may have our protein over here, our mac and cheese over there. We might have our green bean station over here and other vegetables over here. So those food stations are spread out so everyone's not waiting in one line. They're broken up and they can go and kind of taste the different stations. Or action stations, whether it's like a pasta creation or whether it is the dessert stations are becoming more popular, where I know Andretti's does a dessert station where they do some kind of syrup and they do like donut holes in the syrup and then they light it on fire because it has alcohol in it. And then it's like an action station. It's exciting, kind of like Bananas Foster's, but with donut holes. And then they serve it that way, right? So different things that you can get creative. And I think a lot of times too, one thing I recently went to a NACE event back in January, and they were saying that people are wanting elevated cuisines in events. They understand that you need to feed 500 people, but then how does your chef make that better than just a chicken with a vegetable and protein, right? Or a chicken with a vegetable and like a mashed potatoes or starch. And so working with your chefs in the sales office, having a good relationship with your chef. And then also, I think this is where in our program here, even as a hotel or hospitality student, you have to take basic food prep and you have to take professional cooking dining room service. So 2 culinary classes while you're here during your program, that allows you to understand the terminology of the kitchen so that you can go to your chef and say, here's my client's budget. What can we do with this? And the chef can give you some feedback, or you don't make the mistake of what we do. We say, how do we word this in their industry? My bride wants steak on a chicken budget. Or we might say, our bride wants champagne on a beer budget, meaning she's got the budget for beer, but she wants champagne. She got the budget for chicken, but she wants steak. So how do we make that happen? And so a lot of hotel chefs are being creative. And I think also too, one thing that I've learned and I've seen in hotels lately is that the chefs are excited to stretch their culinary skills, to flex their muscles and produce amazing things on the culinary side. That's not just chicken, green beans, and mashed potatoes.
So to make sure, are you recording?
I am. Oh, yes, I am recording.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right there. Yeah. So banquets, typically the room charge is typically the largest amount a group is going to spend at our hotel. The next one is our food and beverage. Okay. So hotels often have an F&B minimum that a group has to spend. Okay.
talk to your client and like, say, if you want to have like a food allergy?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, 100%. And that is becoming more and more popular. So having those discussions with your clients and saying, and the chef, honestly, the chef should ask as well. But we'll talk about how much, like how the chefs prepare for extra people, but they also typically are going to always prepare a few portions of a vegetarian option, or something else, right? But if there are any specific dietary restrictions or dietary concerns, that is something that can be added to the registration information. So that way the meeting planner can communicate that to the chef in advance. Absolutely. And then there's really creative ways to to figure out who that person is, right? The communication with the banquet captain is really important, so they know where that plate of food is going to go in advance, so that way we won't have to ask. Okay. Profit margin between 35 to 40%, which is great. We also can bring that with buffets, also have a little bit of a higher percentage of profit with buffets. Different types of food functions that we have: breakfast, luncheons, dinners. Okay. If there's any kind of entertainment that goes along with our dinner, coffee breaks, we're going to talk about here in just a second. Coffee breaks. Receptions are typically things that don't require sitting down. So we might have what's called cocktail tables, or we call them high boys. Okay. So if you think about, there's two tables when you walk in on the second floor, the big round tables that are this high. Those are called cocktail tables or high boys. So oftentimes you'll see those at receptions where you'll have those scattered around. So people aren't sitting down, but they have some place to rest their glass and rest their food or eat. Okay. So receptions are more kind of just like talking and gathering, and there may be some entertainment with that as well. We also have hospitality suites. So some of the concessions, some of the complimentary things that we can give as far as rooms is concerned is we can offer, maybe if we have like a larger suite, we can turn it into a hospitality suite. So that way the company can like entertain the VIPs, entertain the CEO, can entertain like their top clients or whatever. And we can set up a little bar in there, maybe have some snacks for them to eat. And I think you're the only, have we gone on any field trips in this class with, or not in this class, but with me during your program? I know, Anne, you went in food for front office last semester. Anybody else in here? Not yet? Okay. Well, when we take front office management, we do a lot of hotel field trips. But if you think about like when we went into like some of the presidential suites, how there's like a living room area and then a door that closes off to the bedroom, that living room area can be utilized as an entertainment area. And we can give those as complimentary. So if the guests spend X number of dollars in their food and beverage, then we can maybe offer that as a complimentary service. Let me go back real quick and talk about this food and beverage minimum. This food and beverage minimum is often tied to the number of rooms in the room block, okay? Because if we don't get a lot of our revenue, they're obviously asking us for a discounted rate in their room rate. So we're gonna make up the difference in our food and beverage. So we may say, yes, we're gonna honor a $200 room rate when our normal room rate's $300. We're gonna honor a $200 room rate, but I'm gonna need you to spend $60,000 in food and beverage. Okay, or whatever it is. And that 60,000 is plus. Does anybody not know what plus means? Okay, what does the plus mean? Tax and gratuity. There we go. Yep. So tax and gratuity is that plus. So that 60,000 is not $60,000 in a budget per se. It's 60,000 times 1.2. Actually, at this point, a lot of times it's 22% gratuity. So like 1.3. That's really what it is. So what's 10% of 6? 60,000 is 6,000. So that really is about $78,000 is what they need to spend on food and beverage. And oftentimes when we have that food and beverage minimum, just like attrition goes to the rooms that weren't reserved, if a group does not spend $60,000 on food and beverage, let's say they only spend $55,000 on food and beverage, we're still going to charge them $5,000, but that's going to go towards the rental of the rooms. So we may say spend $60,000 and your room rental is covered. You don't have to pay for room rental. But if you don't spend the minimum of food and beverage, we're going to charge you for your room rental. So that's kind of how a lot of hotels will do it. All right, so using a function sheet for each event, okay? This is one of the things that I have envisioned in my mind for this class to start like built to developing. I'm gonna try to get maybe some examples of function sheets so that we can maybe develop one for each one of our events that are happening, the 2 events that are happening. The menu can build into the theme of the event. And so that's kind of something we can look at. The theme of the event the menu can be part of that to enhance the theme. And then I love this bottom point. It's better to refuse a request than to fail. Sometimes our meeting planners, this goes from the sales to our service, convention services manager, right? The salesperson sells the event. The convention services manager we talked about last week is the one who services the event. They make it happen, right? Somebody once told me the salespeople sell the dream, the services people service the nightmare. I don't really think that's kind of a good way to say that, but that's kind of what it's like, right? If the salesperson over promises and the services team can't deliver, then it becomes a nightmare. And so it's important that the salespeople realize, whether they're working with the chef or the services or the banquet setup team, right? It's better to refuse a request than to fail. I'd rather execute the event flawlessly and tell my client, unfortunately, we cannot accommodate this. But here's the thing. When you say no to somebody, again, going back to my idea of I don't say no, I don't say no to a client, I give them options. So the client's going to make the decision. The client says, I really want to have a horse ride in through the lobby of our hotel, and our people can take pictures with the horse during the event, right? I'm going to say, okay, I'll get back to you on that. Let me figure out what I need to do, right? And so I go and talk to my hotel people. I'm like, hey, by engineering, can we bring a horse in? Will a horse fit in our service elevator? Can we get it in the ballroom? What housekeeping? What other considerations do I need to do? Do I need to put like a plastic coating on the floor where the horse is going to be standing in case they have an accident on our carpet? Like all these things go into little considerations, right? So then they go back to the client. Yes, we can do this, but this is what it's going to take, and this is what it's going to cost. And then they can make the decision. So bless you. It's better to refuse a request than to fail, because we don't want to have things happen, things go wrong. We don't want to, things are already going to go wrong. So we don't want to build in things that could potentially intentionally go wrong. I want to make sure everything's going to be successful. Okay. So refreshment break guidelines. Breaks are typically breaks are quoted on a per person basis. Okay. They can also be done by what we call by consumption. The same thing happens with bars. Bars can be priced at a per person basis, or they can be purchased, or they can be coordinated on a consumption basis. Okay. So really kind of just depends. A lot of times our beverage or our snack or our breaks are going to be on movable tables. So they can be already set up in the back of the house, and then we just roll the table out, put it in place. Some meetings are going to have breaks, either built-in breaks, or they're going to have coffee stations or water stations for the entire duration of the meeting. Okay. So I thought this might be interesting if we did a little bit of math today. And I'm flying off the seat of my pants, so we're going to work on this together. Okay. So let's see. Coffee, decaf coffee, tea, soda, and water. Okay. Let's say we are planning for a AM coffee break, refreshment break, and we have 500 people. Okay. So we have 500 people. Let's figure out how much coffee, decaf coffee, tea, and soda and water we should plan for. So based on these percentages, 65% are going to drink coffee. Nope. So what is 0.65 times 500? 325? Okay. So I'm going to plan on 325 people, 325 cups of coffee. Okay. And let me just double check this math. We're figuring 20 6-ounce cups of coffee in a gallon. So we divide this by 20 cups. 17.5? 16.5? 25, okay. Gallons of coffee. 16 gallons of coffee. It's a lot of coffee. Now, of course, decaf is a little bit less, but we always want to offer decaf. So 0.3 times 500 is 150 divided by 20 cups. $7.5, right? Okay. Tea, 10% times 500 is 100. No, 50, sorry, 50. Divided by 20 equals 1 point. Gallons of tea, and then 25% is 125 divided by 50 drinks. Oh, sorry. What's that? Oh, 2 point. Oh, that's right. Okay. Sorry. 2.5. Ah. Okay. So 125 is 125 drinks. So this is where we can get our information to set up our snack breaks or refreshment breaks and things like that. So because we don't want to overproduce, but we also don't want to underproduce. Okay. And so if we have a coffee station that's available all day, then we want to make sure someone's there to refill that on a constant basis. What do you notice about the coffee consumption during the evening compared to the daytime? Yeah, so we go from 65 to 35% caffeinated. Our decaf only decreased by 10%, but our water and sodas increased significantly in the evening time. Okay. So again, this is just something that this is not like the end all be all. It may be that a group doesn't want sodas and waters. Your snack break, your break may be just coffee. If they want to add soda and water, it's $4 per person. Okay, or $5 per person or whatever it is. You know what I should do? I should get, make a note. I should get some price lists so we can look at some price lists. I have a couple of people I can call and ask them for their current price lists. Okay. Attendance. Okay. Attendance at our food events. The pricing for food typically is 6 months to a year out. So if you're booking an event more than a year out, they may give you this year's pricing with the understanding that the pricing could increase. Okay. And then we typically need between 48 to 72 hours before the event to get the final guarantee. And that final guarantee is what the group pays regardless of price, regardless of the attendance. So if a group guarantees 150 people at a banquet and only 100 people show up, they're still going to pay for 150 people's plates. Okay. So that's also really important from a meeting planner's perspective, is to know the history of your group so that you don't guarantee too much that you're going to end up paying more money for food that's not being consumed. Okay. And so having that conversation with your meeting planner is important from the hotel's perspective. So we have plated or American service. That's the most common way that we serve in banquets, where the food is prepared in the kitchen, put on the plates, and then sent out to the guests. Okay. Russian service is served from platters to the guests. Family style, brought to the table on platters or in bowls. Typically, butler service is used in receptions. This is an example of butler passed appetizers. When the client starts using terminology that is not correct, it's our responsibility as professionals to say, do you mean that you want to do it this way? And then that way is like, help me understand. Let me make sure that I understand you. And I think starting off a statement with, let me make sure I understand you, or let me clarify for a moment so I understand what your request is. If you start off with that type of a statement versus just like, we can't do that, or don't you know that's not butler service? Don't you know that's table service? That's very condescending. And so if you bring it up in a way that is more educational versus condescending and judgmental, that's more often well received than something else that's more negative. So butler service is reserved for reception. French service is prepared on the table side. So like, think about like a Caesar salad being prepared in a restaurant. That's more of the French service. It requires more space in the dining room because you need to have more space between the tables. Preset service. This one is very helpful. So y'all experienced this at Zoka, right? Or no? Was the salad preset? They brought the salads out? Okay, I don't remember because I sat down when my salad was already there. So oftentimes we have preset services. Good, I just want to make sure I wasn't muted. I don't know why it took me so long to think that. But oftentimes, like the first course, whether it's like mostly a salad, is preset. So if you're doing a banquet for 500 people, oftentimes it's a good idea to go and get that salad preset. That's one less step of service that you have to do. We can also take it even one step further and do preset salad and dessert. So then that way, all the servers are doing are removing the salad plate, dropping the entree plate. And then when they remove the entree plate, the guests will grab their dessert and bring their dessert up, if it's still there. If you're like me, I eat my dessert before the entree comes. Yes. Yeah. And so we'll be doing that again on February 28th with the San Antonio Hotel Lodging Association. Exactly. So the pastry students will preset the dessert. Chef Costello and his class will preset the salad, and then they will make the entree as well. And so that's why we're able to do service like that with a limited number of people, because all we're doing is beverages, removing salad, dropping entree, moving entree, and the dessert is there. Absolutely. So buffet service, we know what that is. A la carte catering is not, it's typically only used when we have smaller groups, okay? Or we may have a menu that has option 1, 2, or 3. We may not give our entire menu for guests to order off of like you would have in a restaurant. So in this types, we might have like a chicken, a beef, and a veg option. And so they can order which ones they want in advance, okay? Oftentimes in weddings, in more social events, you see this, especially it's helpful if there are either assigned tables or there's name cards, okay? So like, for example, I'm going to a wedding up in Michigan in June, and it's one of my really good friends I used to work with, and I just sent my RSVP in, and you select your entree option when you RSVP. So I don't know how it's gonna go, but I'm assuming I'm gonna have either a name card, either a signed table, I don't know, but maybe it's a name card. And if I got the beef, maybe there's gonna be a little B up here in the top corner. And that way the servers know exactly who gets what without having to ask, what did you order? So that type of stuff on the social side, again, is things that you can talk to your clients about. At the bride, maybe they may have this option, and then they may not have even thought about how do I communicate to the servers. But from the hotel's perspective, you want to make that a seamless process as possible. And so you may give ideas to your client and say, this is how I've seen it done in the past. And I've seen it done this way and it was not very effective. I've seen it done this way and it was very effective. And so again, having that rapport, that relationship with your client to say, this is, I think, one of the best ways we can do it. That doesn't mean the hotel has to print the name badges, but you can at least give that information to the client. Yeah. Mm-mm. You can add that as a line item on the RSVP. So then again, as that cutoff date is approaching, like you're gonna have to give that cutoff date of the number of RSVPs anyways. So at that point, you'll give the count for each entree option. That's honestly, if it's possible to do it during the registration process, would be awesome, right? If it's not, the hotel typically goes by a percentage. If we're looking at here, obviously vegetarian, I don't want to say obviously, that sounds condescending. Vegetarian is typically the lowest percentage. If there's an option between beef and chicken, people are probably going to select the beef option. And so this will probably be the highest percentage with the middle percentage of chicken, right? So they're going to prepare a certain number of entree items. It does increase the food cost a little bit because you have to be over prepared. But so ideally the best way is if it can be done during the registration process. Sometimes that could happen. If they don't do it in advance, then they could say that we're, unfortunately we're out of the beef options. All right, so for staffing, we want 1 server per 20 guests. We could have as little as 1 server per 10 guests if the service allows for it and or the price. So if the price is a little bit higher, maybe we can get 1 server per 10 guests. There's 1 captain for every 10 to 12 servers. So a captain is going to be the one who's going to be looking out over each kind of section of the banquet area. And then we also have the main banquet captain as well. So there may be one point of contact, kind of like think about the dining room manager for a banquet, and then there's going to be smaller captains that are going to be for each section. But there usually is one main banquet captain or main person that's in charge. It may be the services person, but again, that services person, the way that I looked at it, I mean, sometimes it depended on the situation, but I've done events where, and weddings specifically, where once it turns into a party and they're just dancing and enjoying, all the ceremonial things have happened, the bouquet garter toss, the cake cutting, the toast. Once it's a party, there's no reason for me to stand there and just be there. The banquet captain can handle any kind of requests that come up, right? Especially if the group's not doing like a major grand exit. If they're still doing a grand exit, then of course I would stay to the very end to coordinate that. But oftentimes in the corporate side, once all the stuff is happening, it's just kind of a party for the rest of the day, the rest of the event. Typically, the banquet captain will take over as the point of contact. So, as that convention services manager, it's important to introduce your client to that banquet captain so they understand that this is your point of contact after I leave. All right. All right. So if we have a banquet for, let's say, 500 people, okay, what is 500 divided by 20? 25. So we need to have 25 servers, okay? One captain for every 10 to 12 servers. So we would need to have at least 2 captains, okay? If we're going to do 500 people buffet service, 500 people divided by, let's go with 30 servers. What's 500 divided by 30? 16.6. So you can see when we do banquet service versus buffet service versus plated banquet service, we need less people. So our labor cost is going to be lower, right? Because everyone's going to be eating from the buffet table. And then as the servers, we're just going to be going and picking up empty plates. Okay. And so sometimes if a client is on a budget, we might recommend a buffet style. And they may say, I don't want to do buffet style, but then that's when you come up with the idea of let's break it up. So it's not one big line of buffet. Let's break up your sections into food stations and people can go and do it that way. So it's all about getting creative. Beverage services. So hosted bar, cash bar, and coupons or ticket bar, okay? Hosted bar is the easiest way because it's a flat fee and there's no money exchanged at the event. This is often called open bar, okay? Open bar sounds a little bit more like all you can drink alcohol, which is not always a great thing, right? So hosted bar is a little bit nicer way of saying open bar, but it's essentially an open bar. The guests can go up and they can do an open bar that's beer and wine only. You can do an open bar that is beer and wine and cocktails. Okay. Cash bar, which means the guest is paying for their drinks. And then we also have coupons or ticket bars. So this coupon bar is a way to control consumption. Most companies avoid open bars because open bars open yourself up for over drinking. Okay. Although the bartenders, based on their TABC license, should cut people off. Okay. It doesn't always happen. And so, open bar, a lot of companies don't like open bar because it encourages excessive drinking. So, a lot of times, what they'll do is coupon bars. Everyone gets 2 drink tickets. And then, after they spend their 2 drink tickets, they can continue drinking if they want to on a cash bar basis. They can pay for their own drinks. But those 2 tickets, we're controlling the consumption of the people that are drinking. It also helps control our budget as well. Okay. So I did an event, a bowling tournament event back in October, and we gave everybody 2 tickets. We had to tell everybody the drinks are for beer or wine. They're not for liquor. They're not for mixed drinks. If you want a mixed drink, it's a cash bar. You can purchase your own. Your tickets are valid, and we have to communicate that to the bartenders as well. Okay. So you can do you can do a combination of any one of these. You can do a hosted bar of beer and wine, and then you can do cash bar for liquor drinks, mixed drinks. Okay. Or you can do a hosted bar for 1 hour, and the remainder of the time is going to be cash bar. So you can get flexible with it. Most times the hosted bar is priced by the hour, while the cash bar and coupon tickets are usually charged a setup fee. The reason why we charge a setup fee for cash bar and coupon bars is because we don't know how much people are going to spend. So we need to make sure we at least cover our expenses of the labor for the bartender, the labor to set up the bar, and all that kind of stuff. So we usually do a setup fee for cash bar and coupon bars. Hosted bars are typically charged by the hour. In order to that setup fee is built into the cost when you do it by the hour. Okay. I don't know. I wasn't there. Were people giving coupons to get their drinks? Yeah, exactly. Yes. And the reason why there was no cash at that particular situation is because all that product was donated. There's a lot of difference. There's a lot of difference in, well, I think a couple of reasons why. We wanted to control the consumption so we didn't run out. Okay. And also we want to control the consumption so people didn't overdrink, especially since we're out of school. But it really kind of just depends on the situation, whether cash is going to be exchanged or not. Yeah. Yeah.
But if you keep buying tickets, like, will the person that tickets be the ones that put you off big notice, or is it the person?
That's a very good question. The person who's selling the tickets should not be selling you tickets if you are inebriated. The bartender could also refuse to serve you even if you have tickets, because the same thing happens at a bar or a restaurant. If you're inebriated, even though you have money to pay for the drinks, they can still cut you off. So I guess in that situation, if someone had purchased tickets, additional tickets, and they were cut off, I may, to help soften the situation, maybe diffuse the situation, I may offer to refund them the money for those tickets that they're not gonna be able to spend on the drinks, to kind of help just to diffuse it. But ultimately, when somebody's cut off, they're cut off, because there's a lot that goes into. But I like your question about who is responsible, who's liable. The bartender should not serve even if they are inebriated, whether they have a ticket or not. I don't know that person who sold the ticket when they are inebriated, how they would be held liable, if the bartender ultimately decided to cut them off anyways. Yeah,
Well, the person sold the ticket, even the bartender, they would.
yeah, yeah. The biggest thing, and it's hard to cut somebody off and only had to do it like once or twice, and especially at a conference or an event, it's really tricky to cut somebody off because oftentimes they're staying at the hotel, right? But you don't know if they're going to leave your hotel and fall in the Riverwalk or hurt somebody walking on the Riverwalk or whatever you are, right? So it's always a good idea just to not overserve somebody. Yeah. Hospitality suites we talked about already. When we talk about brands of liquor, okay, the house brand is going to be the standard. Call is a little bit higher, and then premium. So you may have specific brands of liquor that the guest wants to have. There may be someone who's sponsoring their event, and we want to make sure that liquor is prominent at the bar. So you may potentially have, again, cash bar or ticket bar, coupon bar for house and call. If they want premium, then that could be the cash. So all that has to be communicated to the guests. So talking about liability in Texas, we have the TABC, Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission. So every bartender should be TABC certified. All servers that are serving alcohol should also be TABC certified. Okay. And so they're the ones who take responsibility when it comes to serving alcohol. So just as much as the business itself can be sued by the person or the people who are injured by a drunk driver or someone who's intoxicated, the individual bartender or the server can also be held responsible. So we think about staffing one bartender for every 75 to 100 people. Again, this all depends on the type of bar. If it's a beer and wine bar, heck yeah. If you're doing a mixed drinks, then you might want to do like 50 to 75 people for each bartender. Okay. One bar back for every 3 bartenders. Bar stations, from the entrance, we want to open them first. Why would we want to open a bar station away from the entrance first? Let's say we have our ballroom right here. Okay. This is our entrance right here. We have a bar, and a bar with all the seats in the middle. And we have our stage up here in the corner. Kind of weird to have a stage in a corner, but that's just the way it works. Okay. So why would it be important to open this bar first? Right. So as people are coming in, they're going to go to that bar. And then the people that are way back here will have access to these bars as they come in. Otherwise, if every bar is open, most people just gravitate to the closest one. And then your whole entrance can be blocked and congested. So that's a good idea. All right. Any questions about food and beverage service? So my goal is to develop a function sheet for each one of our events. So as we get more details, we can plug that stuff in. Let me go and print those new forms.